Hello, I'm Yildiz Sethi at Crazy Normal for better health and well-being in promoting better ways of working with the mind. I'm inspired to dispel myths and lay out facts about your mind and relationships and mental health. And I'd like you to join me in an exploration of what it is to be a crazy normal like me. But do it in your own way so you can be free to be you. Welcome to Crazy Normal. I have a really interesting speaker with me, David Alan Brown from Indianapolis in USA, who's got a lot to share with us today. So welcome, David.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so David, perhaps you can share with us a little bit about what you do in life before we go deeper into more deeper questions, just a rough showdown of what you're up to.
Sure. I mean, I think fundamentally I'm a teacher, and that's shown up in a lot of different ways, from doing in-person workshops that I develop myself to help people explore their personal growth and become the best that they can be, to corporate workshops and trainings on behalf of other companies and programs in leadership that they've developed and asked me to produce as well. I teach through writing. I taught 10th grade high school English at one point. So I'd say the common thread of who I am and what I do is that I'm primarily a teacher, and I study life and teach about that as much as I can.
Thank you very much, David. That's a really good introduction. It's interesting, I'm also a teacher, and I was a high school teacher for 15 years prior to what I'm doing now. And it's so interesting, when I left teaching, I thought that was it. And no, of course not. I'm now training and teaching, and so it goes pretty deep, doesn't it? That teaching thing.
Yeah, the urge to do it, I think, and
Yeah.
perhaps you share what I do, which is the thrill and the excitement of watching people have their own aha moment. You know, when they suddenly get a concept, if it's something in school, or when they get an understanding of themselves, if it's something we're teaching for people to develop. And so there's a great reward in it for the teacher, and so I think that people like you and I recognize that and really seek that out. And that's perhaps why we do it in so many different ways.
That's right. It's a plus both ways, isn't it? If it works well, right? And it
Absolutely.
keeps us motivated. So, what drives you and what makes you tick as a person, David?
Wow, what a great first question. You know, it's part of my journey now, in the days today is a drive to be as purely authentic as I can be, to really be experiencing life in as many forms as possible, to relinquish the notion that it should always be easy, or that it should always be simple, or that it should always be without any sort of fraught or emotion, or what we call quote unquote negative emotions, to just relish in this amazing being that we are in this amazing time and place, and to revel in sort of the wonder of it all. That's how I've come back to myself and finding myself again. And primary throughout my life and throughout my teaching is when anyone, including myself, can discover this light in living, can they simultaneously understand the responsibility that comes with that and the great opportunity that they have to make a difference in the world and for others. And so those two things combined, if I can do that throughout the day, it's been a good day.
And very interesting, David. The responsibility. Share a little bit of your insights about that, because growth, from your perspective, comes with responsibility. Yes.
I feel it does.
Okay.
I both from a very practical methodology and then an emotional one, and also my spiritual beliefs, is that we are here in this form as human beings with other human beings because we're called upon to enact our key core values, which I think we all share: peace, love, prosperity, joy. And the way that we do that is with interaction with other people. We have plenty of things and stuff, and we have emotions that come from our circumstances and our environments. But the way that we really learn about ourselves, progress upon the scale of human discovery, even the karmic cycle, if that's one way to look at it. There are many ways to look at it. These primary things happen because of our relationships with others. And there are periods in our lives, I think, where we understand that how other people are interacting with us is very, very important. And those are the lessons that we're learning, and we're reacting a great deal. And I think that emotional maturity and spiritual maturity is also understanding, well, if that's the case, then in which instances am I the teacher? In which instances am I the one who's helping someone else overcome or learn or grow or etc.? And I think there are many, and the more times we intentionally step into that and say, oh, I have a responsibility here. I think it goes back to what we were saying about being teachers, recognizing that in that space, we suddenly command a great deal of attention and responsibility and opportunity. Well, I think that if you're going to ask me, what one of my fundamental motivations are, and it's teaching, I'm going to come to learn to understand that that's not just in a classroom. That's in line at the grocery or walking down the street or in my primary intimate relationships and in my casual external relationships. That's what I mean with responsibility.
And I guess, I agree with everything you said, but from my perspective too, it's like, well, am I in tune with what others are feeling, or can I read their body language, or is what I'm saying landing well or not? And it's that kind of interactive monitoring that goes on, isn't there, with any interaction. And as a teacher, I guess you're putting yourself a little bit on a pedestal to help others, right? Which in itself is a responsibility, because it's, oh my gosh, I better know what I'm doing because I don't want to misdirect all these people, That's a pretty horrible thing to do, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that part of what makes you such a great communicator is that you've intentionally cultivated those skills of how to read body language or step into a room or even be able to read energy, as we sometimes describe it. And people think that's, oh, kind of woo woo, but people are doing it all the time. They just maybe have never done the work that you've done and that I've done, which is to really hone in and heighten that skill. And I think that it's a good time to say that I don't do it all the time, that sometimes I'm not particularly aware, sometimes I am shut down, or that my body is and my emotions are responding in a different way, and it's time for that energy to flow in a different direction. And that's just part of the process of understanding where we are and knowing what we need and what we can give, and vice versa. It's a give and take. No one's expecting someone to just to float above the earth and to hover in their greatness. We're trying to have a human experience here, and we give everyone grace to do that as they need.
Yes, that's right. And my belief is, the more you can take in or accept your own fallibilities and your own things that you're still struggling with, or whatever it is, the more human you are, right? To put on this shiny glass coat of look, I'm perfect, can only shatter at some point. Definitely it does. And we all probably start off there, right? Before we discover who we are. I mean, we all have to put on a mask to some extent because you don't actually know who you are. So you kind of try and please all the people around you, and then until you hit the wall, and then you think, oh, this is not working so well.
Yeah, because we do try different things on, and sometimes it changes, but that's such a great analogy. I'll just take that a step further, sometimes the mask blocks our vision and we literally run into the wall. That's such a great way of saying it.
Yeah.
We have to, sometimes it shatters. We have to begin again. And one of the most daunting creative endeavors of our lives is the act of creating ourselves. And it is a creative process, and there is trial and error, and there is learning, and there is stepping back and seeing what has happened and where might we want to go next. But that's one of the wonders of it. And I certainly succumbed to the notion of perfectionism as one of the devices that I use to really hide and really, in a way, just kind of shut myself down. So yes, all of this sort of grace and enjoying the foibles of life, it's fun to rediscover.
Yes, definitely. And you talk about rediscover, and yes, it's good, isn't it? Because as a little child, before we become conscious of ourselves, we're totally out there, aren't we? And we're just natural and normal, and it's great to see little children, even now, in their total oblivion of themselves, that they're just being, and it's almost like we have to go through this journey of yeah, struggle before we finally, yeah, hit that wall probably several times, and each time open up more. That's my personal experience, but it might be different for you.
No, I think it's a wonderful way of remembering, and it's not just that children will put their minds to doing something. It's also that they are willing to just feel whatever they feel, and a toddler will cry and let it all out, and then the next moment they'll turn and see something sparkly and be okay. And it's a very natural sense of this is what I'm feeling right now, and out it comes, and then here's the next thing. And so rediscovering is not merely what talents or skills or how might I function in the world. It's rediscovering how do I function internally? What do I believe? What responsibilities will I accept? What will I push away? It's dynamic, and I'm really starting to love it again.
It's a big task, isn't it? It's a big journey. But for me too, inquiry and questioning has been very much part of that, because I don't know what it's like for you, but the more I learn, the more I know I don't know, right? And it's like, I think as a teenager, I thought I knew everything, of course, and as you get older, you kind of realize, wow, I only know a lot in this tiny little section of something,
Yes.
not a lot generally, and that's good to know, because you kind of, even as a teacher or for myself as a therapist or a trainer, I still very much put myself on their level to some extent. You certainly got to have your presence, but being
Yes, and I think that part of the turning point for many people is uh, your first step that you mentioned, which is, oh, I don't know everything and it's okay. And some people stop there and they say, I know everything I need to know, and then they're done. But really, the diving back in is the reignition of curiosity. It's the wanting to know more, and it's the wanting not just about, I mean, about anything, whether it's a subject or an art or a science or a person or a history or an individual's history. This level of curiosity is part of what draws us back into fully engaged living, and that's I struggle with folks who've said, I got it, I'm done, and I'll just coast from here. And I mean, I have been in that place before, but I think what we're talking about here is all the different ways we can re-engage with life and really get the most out of it.
Yes. And in that we're all different, right? So in a sense, as you said before, we all want love, peace, connection, etc., fulfillment, and yet we all do it in our own particular way. And for me, that comes back to our innate purpose, and yeah, we've all got a purpose, I believe, and I feel very sorry for people who don't connect with their purpose, that are living this other existence and they're not really connecting with who they are.
Yeah.
And that's pretty sad. I believe that's a sad thing.
I do, and you can sometimes engage with people and sense that deep sadness that they have. Very early on in my life, I read Viktor Frankl's brilliant Man's Search for Meaning, and I would put that book out to anyone who's listening right now as just a fundamental place to start on the importance of knowing a purpose and a meaning in your life. The very short version is that he was imprisoned during the Holocaust and used his sociological and psychological skills to counsel his fellow prisoners, and came away from that with an understanding of what he called logotherapy, which was helping people find meaning. And understanding part of what was so profound for me was that meaning can be perceived as very simple. What I see sometimes is the sadness of people whose meaning isn't as grand as they perceive it should be. They're not, they haven't published and sold 100,000 books, or they haven't done, reached stardom or fame or whatever that thing is. And what we really strive to do in our work, and what Frankl helped me understand, is, meaning is in that profound effect that you have upon the very person that's on your right or your left, or who the universe has brought to place in front of you in that moment, in that instant. And so, and it can be very functional, baking or mending or being a tradesperson, or just providing a service that when you do it in a loving and kind way, makes a difference in the world. That's meaning.
Yeah, I agree. And also meaning for me now is, what meaning does it have for me, right? So there's a lot of good things we can do in the world, obviously, but let's find something that I love doing that also is, beneficial for the people I work with, so that, and that again is that coming into contact with yourself, as far as I see it.
Yeah. I see it exactly the same way. And I see that as an incorporation of the energy that surrounds us, a higher power, if you will, really responding physiologically in our physical self to us. Really, I call it answering the call, really just doing that thing. People often come for coaching about, well, how do I know? And it really is exactly what you described. Well, there's an energy, there's an enthusiasm, there's a thrill, there's a love, there's a genuineness, there's you wake up feeling better and eager to do it. And that's what we're seeking. And as you've already said, it could be any one of a spectrum of things, because we are any one of a delightful spectrum of human beings in this experience.
Okay, what was the turning point for you, David? What has been one of your, or the biggest, or one of the biggest turning points for you in your life so far?
Well, I think that part of my life is and I recently compiled all this into a manuscript that hopefully will be published someday. But I started out as quite empowered and very much working on behalf of others, and feeling all of this sort of great feeling that we were just talking about. And then sort of succumb to the daily bits of life, and the needing to focus in on raising a family, and being practical about what needs to happen day to day, and through a series of events and relationships, and I just went on a very slow, long forgetting of my connection to something greater than myself, my purpose, my talents, my calling. I was doing good things on behalf of, I was a stay-at-home dad for almost 18 years, and that wasn't the cause of my depression. I was doing wonderful things at the time. The cause was that I really just wasn't honoring the truth or the call as we sort of just described it. So when it finally became really sort of dangerous, when my depression became truly woeful, and I began to have ideation about harming myself, and really couldn't find my purpose and couldn't find why I was here, there are a couple of very specific incidents where I got quite scared for my own health, that that I truly was. It went beyond, I wonder why I'm not here, to the true definition of ideation. How and where and how would I take action to end my life? And when I resolved to go to a new therapist, because I'd had therapists before that were not particularly helpful, and to be completely honest and to be completely authentic and to dive into the realm of, I don't want to feel this way anymore, and I don't have to feel this way anymore, then that became a turning point. And it became a very, it's kind of a turning the Titanic type of thing. It was a long, slow arc of sort of recovery and turning. And on that arc, there were many things. And many incidents that came from that. But there was just finally the admission of knowing that I don't think that we're here to suffer. I don't think that we're here to bear witness or to fully give up ourselves. And some of that came from my early understanding that there had been times when I had felt exactly what we just talked about, that enthusiasm and energy of life, and I really wanted it back. Yeah. And so that's when I really got serious about who do I want to be and what needs to happen to get me there.
Yeah, very interesting. And you mentioned lots of interesting points there. One of them, depression. I'm a therapist. And in my latest book, Let's Take the Crap Out of Psychotherapy, I kind of say, look, find a therapist that knows you can improve or knows you can change, because having one that thinks that you're stuck in this forever is not helpful at all.
Absolutely.
And also, even the word depression, think about it. What are you depressing, right? Is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it, a joy that you can't dare give yourself? I don't know what it is. It's different for different people, right?
Right, but what a wonderful way of beginning the process of understanding that the vitality that you're seeking in all of the areas that you just mentioned is there. The depression phraseology is deeply important and such a great way of remembering. And I think that for me, for those who are unfamiliar, for me, depression wasn't sadness. For me, depression was not feeling anything.
That's right.
And it was a numbness.
Yeah, that's to me a full shutting down, right?
Absolutely.
And actually the choice is either you do something about this, David, or you die, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you got to. Yeah.
Being presented to me very clearly, and as a choice. And so that absolutely was the turning point as we started this segment. And I think that's what's remarkable to me was this this understanding that, as you say, a therapist who immediately understood, this wasn't typical, or this didn't have to be my reality, and that there was a process out of it. Now, my commitment to true authenticity and to truth about what was going on in my life, my situation, and how I felt, that was primary to my moving forward with professional health. He helped diagnose me, and he was also extremely helpful in keeping me aware of the option of a medical solution and not saying that was the solution.
Yeah.
And for me, it never was.
You have choice.
Always talk therapy and behavioral. That was very important in my relationship with my therapist. And so, I'm glad for that. I know it helps. I have a daughter, a grown daughter, who has mental health struggles, to say the least, with very, very harsh anxiety diagnosis that we've been struggling with for years. And I do know the medical aspect of care and the difference that it's made. I think the bottom line is what you're saying. Good therapy are people who believe in you. Good coaches are people who want the best for you. Good friends are the ones who are always rooting for you. The responsibility of loving ourselves and others, no matter what's going on, is kind of why we're all here, to bring it full circle.
And yes, I agree. And good therapists, like good coaches, you know, and not just optimistic, they also have well proven ways of working that work and help you, assist you to come out of whatever you're stuck in. And yes, I believe we've all been depressed. I don't think there's a single human being that hasn't been depressed. And I just see it as an opportunity. Your soul is telling you, this is not working, Yildiz, this is not working. You've got to do something here. This is not good for your soul, basically. And that's what depression is. And once you wake up to the, okay, I'm going down a very dark hole, and actually I do have a choice, then that's the beginning of the change, isn't it, really?
I think so. And when what you're driving at is really the what we call the gift of emotion all across the spectrum, is understanding that. I mean, again, we've talked about depression as something more and something more clinical, but for me, it was also the sort of the denial of feeling an emotion. And so when we feel sadness, when we feel darkness, when we feel joy, when we feel anger, when we feel enthusiasm, this is the body's mechanism for bringing us into life and into that moment. So I completely agree with what you were just saying. When we're in those places of difficulty or sadness or, these quote unquote negative emotions, no, they're merely part of the mechanism, as you just described, to remind us, to draw us back, to bring us into either the moment or to draw upon something that's spiritual and greater than us, or to turn to a friend. I mean, these are the compelling actions of us as human beings. They're built into our molecules and to our systems and to physiologies, and this is what psychologists and coaches and therapists know now. Is, well, yes, of course your body's ringing a bell, sometimes louder than others.
And there's no such thing as a negative emotion, actually. It's always trying to tell you something. So, even anger, which people don't want to admit to anger, but it's like, yeah, it's like, what are you doing to yourself? God.
Yes, and I had very specific times in the last 5 years, really, since that turning point that I was talking about, where I was truly just relearning. Uh, I had an incident occur where someone I trusted very much, an attorney I was working with, and who just completely, just everything fell apart. And I remember I expressed to friends later, I've never been that angry in my life. And at the same time, because I had been so unfamiliar or just not used to feeling my emotions, it also really overwhelmed me. And I was kind of simultaneously both engaging in the situation and, especially after, looking back and saying, oh, that's what anger is, and that's how you deal with it. And I was literally asking people, like, what do you do? Like, and then, they're punch pillows or go for a run, or okay, great. I found this list of, well, this is how you sort through the emotion at the time. I relearned that at 50 some odd years old. And that's kind of the turning point, was sort of this sense of, oh, right, this is what living is.
But it's also, and no offense, no offense to our parents, but it's how we bring up children, right? We often don't allow them to express or feel, to be a good girl or a good boy, you've got to just do what you're told, etc. So we're very strongly conditioned, unfortunately, all of us.
Yes, and it's no surprise to me that at least in America, there was a huge resurgence during the pandemic of Fred Rogers, of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and so many of his messages were about feel what you're feeling and experience what you're experiencing and trust who you are. And of course, he's doing it all in language to young children.
Yeah.
But boy,
it's very good, very good.
His passing was a big part of that too. But
Yeah.
The messages that flooded us on the internet and elsewhere were, let's listen to this simple notion of remembering how we function as human beings, and honoring that and trusting that and loving that. And we're still trying to do that every day.
So your way of working, David, is convergence. I seem to remember when looking at your profile. So can you just give us a very short understanding of what that might be?
So convergence is a process that helps people recognize and regulate their inner voices in a way that empowers them to respond to things that are happening every day and around them, and also becomes an energy, that enthusiasm we were talking about, that can be put into a manifestation cycle to create the things that we want in our lives. So we've been dancing around this in a lot of different ways, but very simply put, for me, the three primary parts of the human experience are the instinctual emotional side, which we've touched on, the action, the doing side, which is the human being, a verb in this case, being human, and then relationship with it, and integration of a higher power by any one of a number of definitions. Participants are guided to define that for themselves and understand how that works in their own life. I'm not starting a church. You don't have to believe what I believe, but at the same time, an understanding and entering into relationship with something larger than ourselves is part of the understanding.
Yeah.
So how do those different parts work? How do you recognize them, and then how do you integrate them together into an empowered life, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you, David. That sounds really good. And it's also interesting to me that when we're young and when we've got children and relationships, and you've got to put dinner on the table, there's so many things you have to physically do, even though we love our family and we love our children, we do it, but it's very much a duty to some extent. And there is a kind of, I've noticed, particularly in women and probably in men too, actually, that once the children are more or less grown up and doing their own thing, there is a sense of liberation, and that's what happened to me too. That, once my youngest was leaving school, I was thinking, what am I doing? Still doing this, and it's like, okay, wow. Do you mean I can really sit back and think about what I want to do now? Because what I did before was perfect, but you evolve, don't you? And what you did before, which might have been perfect, you kind of outgrow. That's what I do. So we go through phases, don't we, where whatever we're doing is perfect, and then somehow that might remain, or you might outgrow it and decide, yeah, actually, I've really enjoyed doing that, but now I'm interested in this,
Of course, yeah, and that's the progression of life. Of course, I'm a writer, so I like to say life is chapters, and I've just found that to be absolutely true. Part of the trick for many people, including myself, is to not degrade what was before if it's different than what was now. And so I love the way you phrased that, which was, that was perfect then, and now here's where I am. And it's a huge portion of I think, feeling confident in where we are, which is that very important presence of just be here now.
That's right.
In this space, what is happening, and what am I bringing, and what's required of me, and that way, it avoids this sense of loss or judgment, especially. That's where I get trapped a lot. Is, well, what did I do, and why didn't I do, and etc. And I try to just steer clear of that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, look, you're just a human being, I mean, it's like we are where we are because of all our choices. But if you're anything like me, I've also made lots of rabbit hole runs as well, which didn't work so well, and had to come back and rethink. So it's choices, but it's also consistency, isn't it? You have an overall goal you want to get there. How are you going to get there? Is it this path? Is it this path? Is it this path?
Yeah. Yeah, which was what was so delightful about your very first question, which was, say, so what motivates you? And I think that people at any time in their life can take a moment, and perhaps with help, or with a journal or something, and find those threads that have always been there. I've written plays and watched them back years later and realized that what I'm still teaching or learning about was woven into the dialogue or the action of
That's
that
right.
play, which
That's
was
right.
based on something that I remembered from when I was a child, or that fundamental question. Oftentimes, you can see the threads of it,
Absolutely.
no matter, wherever, whatever activity you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when I look back at my life, and I'm in my fourth career, and, I started back in as a science in a laboratory doing research. It's like, well, okay, what's the thread? There is still a thread. It's a big question mark about how things work, and, and how I work and how the universe works, really, but how I work is how you work too in your own way. So it's a big question, isn't it?
It is, and that's, as we were saying before, it's being willing to want to have the answer to the question instead of give up and say, "Oh, well, I'll never know," or "It's for someone else to decide," or
And
"It's unknowable." Like
and
those
and,
are all
and
limited thoughts.
and the other thing to that, waiting for the answer, be prepared for it not to be what you want it to be, right?
Oh, yes, of course.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes we think we already know it, but when it really comes back, it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't what I was expecting, but yeah, it's probably right.
Precisely, yes. The illusion of control, or that if I behave a certain way, the answer is certain to be this.
Yeah,
And understanding that there are many factors at play.
that's right. A lot going on. Look, it's been really lovely talking to you, David. Can you give me the name of your company, or how listeners can reach you?
Yeah.
And I'll
Okay.
put them in the case notes as well. But if you just say,
So the program itself is called Convergence, and my website, which is davidallenbrown.com, and look at the notes, because the only tricky thing there is the middle name, which is one L, ALAN. But
Yeah.
davidallenbrown.com points you to all the ways I teach,
Yeah.
facilitating programs, that I'm a writer and author, and then also that I've created this program, Convergence.
Yeah.
And so it has some videos there and an assessment you can take and some different information, and a way to contact me directly if you just like to talk about what this is and where this concept came from and how I came to write it. And so that's there as well. On Instagram, I'm the author, David Allen Brown, and you can track me down there, send a message, and in fact, if you're interested in the program and you find me on Instagram and follow and send me a message, I'll send you a coupon for significant discount on the course.
Fabulous.
So all these different things that we're doing to connect and get to know each other.
Excellent.
I think from my first answer, you probably surmised that's what I like to do. And, so I hope people will try it out.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, David. It's been lovely talking to you.
I've really enjoyed it so much. And thanks for your insights.
I know you will have found David Allen Brown interesting, giving a different perspective about how he works with people in getting them motivated and towards success, changing mindsets, etc. So if you're interested, you can look at his website below and contact him there, and also see what he has to offer. You can find out more about me and what I offer at rapidcorehealing.com, or contact me at yildiz@yildizsethi.com.